or Miss Alka, and I work at Beachcombers Academy, and I am the intermediate teacher, so I teach grades 4 to 7 in one class, and I actually have one grade 8 as well this year.
Thanks, Elka. One of the reasons why I wanted to interview you is because I want to know what it's like to work in a school where there's almost no technology. Could you tell us a bit about your experience here, how long you've worked here, and what your day looks like?
So I've worked here for just over 2 years, so this is my 3rd year. And we have a bit of technology, but we stay away from it in the younger grades. So the first 2 classes, there's a K1 class and a 2-3 class, they don't use technology. And my class has limited access, so we do have some computers in our classroom, but we don't focus on it necessarily. And the reasons why we do that are so that they learn hands-on ways of producing and creating and thinking. So we have a lot of manipulatives. For math, we have a lot of Montessori blocks and beads and all that kind of thing. And we also like the old-fashioned books as well. It's nice for students to actually use libraries and see a selection and learn how to pass on a book that they like. So kind of going back to that more interactive way of learning, I think.
Yeah. And how do you, like, I would say that most teachers now plan lessons, the majority of their lessons, around some kind of PowerPoint or some kind of smartboard activity. How do you introduce concepts in math, for example, without using like the smartboard or that kind of stuff?
They work pretty independently with math. So because we have so many different grades, especially in my class, they kind of work at their own pace. They use a program that teaches them step by step, and it goes along with hands-on manipulatives. So they've got their blocks and their beads and their hundreds. They've got like little hundreds charts and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do use a whiteboard, which is pretty much all I need for that. But most of the time I'm actually one-on-one or working with smaller groups, and we're either working through things visually or hands-on, and then relating it back to whatever concept they're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
So that's interesting. So like, do you find that you're teaching the whole class together less, and you're sort of focused just on smaller group work most of the time?
Yeah, when it comes to math, for sure. But I do as well do group teaching in language arts and socials and science. But I try, especially with socials and science, I try to just minimize that and then give them sort of creative thinking or critical thinking activities where they've got to work in groups and discuss things. Or recently in science, they developed their own experiments, so they had to go through the scientific method and then come up with an experiment and use whatever they had, or bringing in materials and then demonstrate that. So teaching that, I did a little bit of work through textbook work, but also keeping that to a minimum.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure it could be handy in some ways to use a smartboard for that, but I don't need it a lot of the time.
Right.
So,
because I think as new teachers, we're always taught, like, there is a push for technology, and we're always taught, like, use technology to engage your students. So in terms of engaging students, do you find that the students here are less engaged, or how do you do that without having some kind of video that explains stuff? And
well, I think having an actual human explaining something and showing it is a lot easier to grasp, and especially if you have something that, you know, they can also try and come up and try something, I think that they'll end up grasping that better because it's accessible. It's not once removed behind a screen.
Right.
I do use PowerPoint presentations because I'm very visual. I'm an artist as well. So, but I keep that to, you know, just showing images. So I'll just show a slideshow and talk over that. So I really like to have like a story that goes along with images that I'm showing. So it's still me speaking.
Yeah.
It's not just sort of sitting back passively and watching a video of someone else.
Okay. And would you, like, can you imagine going to a school where the expectation is to use a smartboard every day?
I'm sure that I would catch on to it. I've
Mhm.
used smart boards in the past and found them pretty handy. Um, but I think that I probably wouldn't cling to it that much.
Yeah.
It's really interesting talking about engaging, because one of the most engaged I've seen students was when I was drawing things in the moment on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
So I was drawing some kind of scene, and they were so excited to see what I was going to draw next. So I think to see something being created right there in reality is pretty fascinating for them.
Right. And do you think so I'm a parent and my kids go to school here. And do you think that as adults we're doing our kids a disservice not to be introducing them to blogging, for example? Like, I know lots of kids in other schools get to do blogging in grade 1 or grade 2.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're using all kind of, I don't know, like different things to communicate with kids in other parts of the country, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you think that our kids are missing out on something, not having access to that technology right away?
It's funny because I actually did like a pen pal type thing recently where we had to write something and send it.
Right.
And it was amazing to see how many students hadn't had that experience of writing out an address with the return address and putting a stamp on it. And they were all so afraid to lick the envelope, which I thought was funny because I used to love that as a kid.
Yeah.
So I kind of took it back to that. We have actually done blogging with international schools, so with sort of partner schools, but it's and we still have the internet, so we've done some projects like that with smaller groups of intermediate students.
Right.
So I don't think that they're missing out on that. At the same time, I think that that's just one project and one use of a computer. I do PowerPoint projects and that kind of thing with my students, but what I find is actually that just being on the computer and having that screen time tends to be the draw rather than the actual project itself often.
Right.
So I'm quite strict about gathering the information first before getting access to the computer, because often they just want to get on for the sake of being on the computer.
Right.
So I think that in a way it's giving them more time to learn how to interact face to face with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely think for the younger ones, it's not doing them a disservice to wait a little bit with that.
Right. And I agree with you. Like, I think that actually they do get a lot of practice. And I feel like you as a teacher are very engaged with them in terms of, like, you're reading to them every day yourself, even though these are kids that are in grade 4 all the way up to grade 8, right? They sit and listen to you read.
Yeah.
They do a lot of silent reading. And it's nice. The energy in the classroom is very quiet.
Yeah.
And so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Miss Elka. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.